everyone. We are back for chapter 11 in The Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus, written by Dusty Bowling. We have a guest audience right here. This is Cooper. You've met him before. I know. It's so fun to listen to the story, isn't it? So he's going to sit on my lap for a little bit. Do you want to look over there? Do you see him? Say hi. No, he wants to look out the window. Okay, so Cooper and I are excited to start chapter 11. If we remember in chapter 10, an exciting thing happened for Avon. She had met Connor in the library when she ate lunch that one day. And he hardly ever leaves his home, he said, and his mom works. And so he was home by himself, but he doesn't live very far from the Stagecoach Pass. And so he decided to walk over, and she's out painting with her dad. And she sees him coming across. And can you imagine how that made her feel to know that she'd met someone at school who was interested in knowing her and spending time with her? And he has made the effort to come over and see her. So they talked a little bit, but then they decided to go into that shed that Avon had found with the 7 signs that said "Do not enter." And Connor was able to push the door in, and they opened up this box, and it's got all these old documents. And if you remember, I think it's from 1973, so quite a while ago. But there's this thing about tarantulas again in it, and I think I mentioned that I don't think tarantulas would ever be my favorite spider. And anyway, so and it also had these initials on it, AVN, which of course immediately I was thinking, why would an old box have like her name on it, AVEN? But then she says, oh no, it's because of the Kavanaughs, who was the owner. But anyway, if you also remember, Henry, who is the older gentleman who works in the soda shop, he almost acts like he knows her from somewhere else. And he thinks she likes tarantulas and that she wants to be in a rodeo, and she doesn't like any of those. So she can't quite figure out if maybe he's just confused or what's going on. So anyway, let's go to chapter 11. The next day after school, Mom was out checking on a beef delivery for the steakhouse, and Dad was dealing with a chicken that had gotten loose from the petting zoo when I heard a knock on the apartment door. I put down my e-reader and got up to see who was there. I've been reading a new book called Stargirl. I picked it up for 2 reasons. One, it took place in the Arizona desert, and I was doing everything I could to come to terms with my new living situation. I thought reading an interesting story set here might make me view it differently. And 2, it was about a girl who totally doesn't fit in with anybody. She's completely her own unique self and doesn't care what anyone thinks. I wish I could say the same thing. I heard the bark before I even opened the door and knew it was Connor. I asked him how school went as we walked down the stairway together. Okay, he said. A couple of kids barked at me. It's so embarrassing when they do that because I always bark back. I scowled. They wouldn't get away with that if I was around. I wasn't kidding either. This injustice would not stand. This unfairness would not be tolerated as soon as I learned how to use nunchucks. So how was your day? Connor asked, interrupting my little daydream. I didn't see you at the library today. I didn't want to tell him that I'd eaten lunch in the bathroom stall. It was okay. I didn't go to the library because my mom doesn't want me to skip lunch anymore. It makes me cranky. I gave him a serious look. Low blood sugar. He smiled. It sucks we don't have any classes together. Maybe you can stop by the library after you eat lunch, even if it's only for a few minutes. Sure. Hey, you want to get an ice cream? Before he could answer, I stomped up the steps of the soda shop. I waited for him to open the door for me. Not that I wasn't capable of opening it with my chin and shoulder. I just figured I'd let him be a gentleman. But he opened it begrudgingly and scowled. I don't think I want any. Well, how can you say no to free ice cream? I said as I walked to the counter. Didn't you know I'm a VIP here? I get free ice cream, free coleslaw, free arrest, and all the free gold spray painted rocks my heart could ever desire. I told Henry I wanted a double scoop of mint chip in a bowl. While he scooped the ice cream, I asked him, "Hey, what did you mean about a rodeo? When was the last time Stagecoach Pass even had a rodeo?" The arena looked like it hadn't seen a rodeo in about 100 years. I looked at Henry, but he was just standing there, staring at my torso. His mouth hung open. The scooper in his hand dripped ice cream onto the floor. "What?" I asked him. "What on earth happened to your arms?" He seemed extremely concerned. Connor and I glanced at each other. "You know I don't have any arms, Henry." "Well, you used to," he declared. He stared confusedly at the empty space where my arms should hang. "Did you lose those in a horse riding accident?" "What?" "Yeah," he said a little more clearly. "You were in a riding accident, weren't you? That must be what happened." "No, Henry," I said. "That's not what happened." "Yeah, like a horse trampled my arms off. I mean, just trampled my arms clean off." Henry's face seemed to clear up a little, and he looked at Connor. "What would you like, son?" "Nothing for him," I said. "He's on a strict diet of air." As Henry continued scooping my ice cream, Connor whispered to me, "That was so weird." "I know," I whispered back. Henry placed a scoop of chocolate on the counter. Darn it, I would never get that mint chip. And Connor carried it for me outside. We sat in the rocking chairs on the porch again while I ate my ice cream, holding the spoon with my toes. Connor barked at a couple of visitors passing by. They looked up at him in surprise, and then they saw me and were extra surprised. "I hate it when people look at me," he muttered. "Me too." Connor turned his attention to me. "You know, you're really good at that." "At what?" "That," he said, "eating the ice cream." "Wow, how many people do you think get complimented for how good they are eating ice cream? I guess it's 13 years of practice that makes me such a pro." "It's a pretty good skill." "Anyone could do it if they had to," I said. Connor shrugged. "So what do you think that was all about in there?" "I have no idea. Henry is a very confused person." Connor and I heard a squeaking sound, and we both turned and looked at the soda shop window. Henry was cleaning it with a spray can of whipped cream. He waved at us through the smear. Connor waved back. "What's wrong with him?" he asked me. "Mom says he has dementia. I guess it makes him confused and forgetful. He's super old, too, obviously." "Do you think he knows about the Kavanaughs?" Connor asked. "He's worked here since forever, so if anyone knew anything about them, it would probably be him. He just doesn't seem to understand anything." I watched as Henry scowled at the glass with a "why won't this darn window cleaner work" sort of expression, his arms crossed. I smiled at him, and his face brightened. He disappeared, apparently not concerned about the creamy window anymore. "Why do you think the Kavanaughs are so secretive?" Connor asked. "I have no idea." I thought to myself for a moment, maybe they're criminals hiding from the law. "Or maybe they're famous," Connor said. "Yeah, maybe they're famous members of a boy band, and they don't want anyone to know that they also dabble in Western-themed amusement parks because it would ruin their cool pop star image." Now the storytelling gears in my mind were running. "Or maybe they escaped rodeo clowns, and the rodeo clown mafia is out to get them." Connor chuckled. "Why would they be out to get them?" "Maybe they pulled a prank on the wrong person. Shot someone they shouldn't have in the face with one of those flowers that squirt water, or hit someone on the head with a squeaky foam hammer, and that person did not find it funny. And now that person is out for revenge." I had to admit, the theory was totally believable. "Or maybe someone's already gotten their revenge on the Kavanaughs," Connor said. "Maybe they're dead." He looked so serious that little goosebumps broke out on my legs. A loud beeping sound startled me. I looked down Main Street and saw a large truck backing up to the steakhouse. Mom walked outside with a clipboard in her hands. I turned to Connor. Have you ever pulled any pranks? I asked him, hoping to lighten the mood. He shrugged. My friends and I toilet papered a teacher's house a couple of years ago. He grimaced. We got in a lot of trouble. What about you? Oh, well, no big deal, but I only pulled just the most awesome prank of all time. What'd you do? Connor asked excitedly. Well, back in fourth grade, we knew we were going to have a substitute teacher one day because our teacher had to go to a funeral. So my best friend Emily took these arms from one of her mom's mannequins. Why did she have mannequins? She did a lot of sewing and stuff. I think she used to use them to model her clothes and take pictures or something. Anyway, Emily brought them to school in her backpack, but they were really big, so the hands stuck out at the top. Connor laughed. Like zombie arms? Yeah, it was like the Night of the Living Dead. So anyway, when we got to our classroom, our covert operation went into effect. Emily and another friend, Matthew, tried to help me secretly stuff the arms up the armholes of my long sleeve shirt, but the tops of the arms were too big to fit up the sleeves, so we had this brilliant idea to stuff them down into the sleeves through the neck hole. And the arms were so much longer than my sleeves that they stuck way out at the bottom, and I totally looked like a mutant with arms hanging down all the way to my knees. But we decided we'd come too far and had to go with it anyway. So Matthew held both of the mannequin hands in his to hold the arms up. And when the teacher called for us all to take our seats, I yelled out, Matthew, let go of my arms! And he pulled on the fake arms. The idea had been that he would basically pull my arms off and then hold them up over his head in triumph, howling like some wild barbarian. Cool, Connor said. Yeah, I agreed. It would have been, but what our dumb fourth grade brains had failed to realize, though, was that because the arms wouldn't fit up my sleeves, they wouldn't completely fit down my sleeves either. And the arms got stuck about halfway out. Matthew yanked on them, and they wouldn't come out of my sleeves. So what happened? Well, since the arms weren't coming out of the sleeves and our plan was totally falling apart, I started crying out, oh no, my arms! You're tearing my arms off! I can feel my arms being torn off at the sockets right now as we speak! Oh, the humanity! My poor arms! Everyone was laughing, but the sub just stared at us. Matthew gave up and went to his seat, and so did I. My sleeves were so stretched out that the arms dragged on the floor next to me as I walked, and I had to maneuver around them to sit at my desk. Connor covered his mouth. Oh no, did you get in trouble? No, the sub was actually pretty nice. She didn't tattle on me to the principal or anything like that, though she did make me wear those stupid arms until lunchtime. Connor laughed. I bet you looked pretty silly. Yeah. I don't know if I'd call that the most awesome prank of all time. Yeah, it was kind of a fail. Epic fail, Connor said. I looked down at my bowl of ice cream, already melting into a soup in the heat. I didn't feel like eating it anymore. After all, I really wanted that mint chip. You want the rest of this? I asked Connor. He shook his head. I turned my attention back to the steakhouse. You know, the gun show is starting in about an hour. I grinned mischievously to myself. If I had hands, they'd have been doing that evil finger tapping right below my chin. Connor gave me a confused look. So? I put my ice cream down and jumped up from my rocking chair. Follow me. So Connor followed me to the steakhouse, where Mom had finally finished up with the delivery and the trunk had left. We snuck around to the back entrance and made our way to the kitchen, where cooks, busboys, and servers were all bustling around, getting ready for dinner. We stood secretly behind the giant commercial fridge. Connor and I watched and discussed as a busboy mixed a giant vat of coleslaw with his hands, his arms buried in it all the way up to his biceps. He was wearing a tank top, and we saw he had coleslaw juice dripping from his armpit hair. Connor made a sort of laughing, gagging sound behind me, and I said, "Remind me to never eat the coleslaw here again." Connor giggled and barked, "He should have little hair nets for his armpits." "What y'all doing in here?" we heard from behind us. I whirled around to find Josephine standing behind me, her arms crossed. Josephine had already introduced herself to me on the day we moved to Stagecoach Pass. She had come to Arizona from Texas when she was only a teenager and had been working at the park since forever. She was currently serving, hostessing, and doing all kinds of jobs for the steakhouse. She seemed to me like she ran the place. She was probably 80 years old, but she could still carry one of the giant trays that held a dozen bowls of cowboy beans. I thought quickly. Mom just told me to grab a couple of steaks for dinner." Josephine gazed at me with that strange look she had given me the first time I met her. Sometimes when I was in the steakhouse, I'd catch her staring at me from across the restaurant. I was used to people staring at me, but this was different somehow. "Well, she was just here." Josephine scratched at her cropped red hair, obviously dyed. No 80-year-old had hair that color. "Why didn't she just take a couple then?" I shrugged. "She forgot." "All right, grab them and then stay out of the way. Dinner's starting." She plowed through the swinging doors that led to the dining room like she was on a serious mission. Connor opened the giant commercial fridge and grabbed 2 thin cuts of steak. Then we rummaged through counter drawers till we found some kitchen twine and a pair of scissors. We made our way upstairs to the apartment. I was relieved to find it empty. Mom must have gone off to deal with another job or crisis. It seemed the work never ended here. It was sloppy and hazard, but Connor managed to dig a hole in each of the steaks, tie the twine through them, and then tie them around my t-shirt sleeves, going through the arm and neck holes. I loosely draped a cardigan over my shoulders, and we made our way downstairs and out to the street to watch the gunfight, where a small crowd was already forming. Oh my gosh. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Oh, what's going to happen? "Don't be so nervous," I told Connor as his ticking increased. "It's just that there are a lot of people around," he said. Yeah, there were like 4 people standing by us. We had to wait only a minute before the cowboys came out and started yelling at each other. I tapped my foot while they went through their daily spiel. Finally, the moment came when the blue shirt cowboy, who also happened to be a server at the steakhouse, raised his gun and pointed it at the cowhide chaps cowboy, who also worked in the souvenir shop, and shouted, "When I'm done with you, there won't be anything left to snore." I made sure I was standing behind Cowhide Chaps Cowboy. Blue Shirt Cowboy always missed Cowhide Chaps Cowboy with that first shot, but today he wouldn't miss completely. At the moment Blue Shirt Cowboy fired, I cried out in pain and shrugged the cardigan dramatically off my shoulders. Connor snickered beside me with his hand over his mouth. A couple of kids standing nearby screamed in terror, and their parents looked alarmed for about 1 second, all the time it took to assess the situation. Come on, it was clearly 2 steaks clumsily tied to my t-shirt and not 2 shot-up arms. The cowboy stopped mid-fight and stared at me, probably not sure what to make of my steak arms, as the little kids cried and clung to their parents' legs, afraid their arms were next. The fight was all messed up now, and people started dispersing into the rest of the park. The cowboys glared at me. Connor draped the cardigan back over my shoulders as I smiled sheepishly at them. "Sorry," I said. "I didn't mean to mess up your show." The next morning, the cowboys went and complained to Dad about my shenanigans. He and Mom and I sat at the little kitchen table over bowls of cereal after they busted me. "The goal, Avon," Dad said, "is to bring visitors into the park." He gestured dramatically toward himself. "Not scare them out of the park." He threw his hands back out. I nodded in understanding. Won't happen again. He gave a satisfied nod and pushed his bowl away. He stood up and kissed the top of my head. Have a good day at school, Sheebs. After Dad left, Mom looked at me and pursed her lips. She took a bite of cereal and chewed. It was a pretty good one. Yeah, it was, I said. And we finished breakfast together, communicating only through overly stern looks and repressed giggles. Oh my goodness. Did you get what she was going to do when you figured out they were putting a string on holes through the stakes? And they were talking about the gunfight. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't until then. You didn't really understand it until you're like, oh, and she put the cardigan back over. Yeah. She added a little excitement to that gunslinging show, didn't she? Do you ever think her parents were really upset with her? Do you? No, I don't think they were either. I think they're just glad that she's starting to be happier and enjoy where they're living, and I think they're probably glad that she has a friend who's coming and spending time with her. And Connor seems like a really nice kid. So I think her dad had to tell her don't do it again because obviously, since he's the manager, they have to make sure that the park is fun for people to come to. But I do think both he and Mom thought it was sort of clever, and Mom was even giggling, at the breakfast table. So I know, but it is interesting. Who knows what's happening with Henry? Henry seems, and then she's getting weird looks from, is it Josephine? The lady who runs the